I wasn't there when you were getting on.
Had to go up to the cities for a health and wellness seminar.
Oh, nice.
And a husband and wife from, he's a
So it's 6:30, so I'm going to call the meeting to order so we can be respectful of schedules tonight. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, Mayor Kratzky, I am present. Groko is absent tonight. Kufal,
present.
Padilla,
Present.
Rose,
Present.
and Eager. She is also going to be absent tonight. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
No changes.
Okay. Then we need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight, February 5th, 2025.
So, second.
Motion made by Padilla, seconded by Kufal. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to comments, updates, and concerns. Do we have any citizens here that would like to speak with us tonight? Move on to council members. Any updates from council? City staff, any updates?
The only thing I just wanted to share was coming up here on Wednesday, February 26th at the library from 10 until 1 p.m. There will be staff representing Congresswoman Michelle Fischbach at the library. And so if anybody wishes to go over and talk to their staff about anything, comments, suggestions, concerns, this is an opportunity for the public. Again, Wednesday, February 26th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve it when ready.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Padilla. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kufal. Any discussions about the consent agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. No public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to communication requests and petitions. We have grocery bingo, adult painting class at the library, Dr. Seuss Day at the library, and bingo at St. Mary's. Department and committee reports and action items. I believe the first on our agenda is Public Works, but I think Ty said no update for I&I tonight. Is that correct? No. Anything else for us? Okay. So then we'll move on to the ambulance department, and we have Sarah here and a couple of other ambulance representatives. So we'll talk about the replacement of our rig and any other updates you have for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First off, I just wanted to make sure that you guys all received our annual report and see if there's any questions you guys had in regards to any of that.
I don't think so, but thank you for putting that together for us. It's always helpful to get those end of the year reports.
Sure. And then I brought John Scheich with me as well. So he is another one of our managers. He takes care of all of our fleet. We're constantly turning them over, obviously with having 21 trucks all the time. So I will let him talk about the remount versus new on the new ambulance.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Real quick, just some highlights. Obviously, new vehicles, they're pretty expensive. Right now, we're looking at an equivalent vehicle of what is already on the docket for replacement, around $350,000. And they're about a year and a half to 2 years at the earliest. Remounts are good. Find a good quality remounter. They can be done and look just as good, redone. It's not a used vehicle by any means. It's your vehicle that you just put a new chassis underneath. So those are kind of the big highlights of the new versus remount.
Are the engines still good to go if they're replacing the chassis.
Well, it's a whole new chassis that's under there, so it's a brand new, it's basically new from cab and underneath the patient compartment area. So you'd have whatever is engine of your choice. Right now, we tend to use a lot of gasoline engines. Those are more available in the Fords. We prefer the Ford platform. But you can still get diesel engines in Chevy platform. If you go with an F-Series chassis, that would require a little more work to your box to close off that opening between the cab and the back. Can be done. It's just more labor intensive for remount. But you can get diesel engines in both the truck chassis.
But your recommendation would be go to the Ford?
I would recommend that you stay with a van and probably a Ford if you do a re-chassis, because it's already on a Ford chassis, and that would cut down on your labor costs of the remount.
So essentially, it's just that box and back that's being
Right.
reused, right?
Right.
That patient care area. Everything else is brand new.
And my understanding is the patient care area is pretty standard from
Yes.
not,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
I think the only thing that we talked about that might want to update over time, and John can go on this a little bit more and has more knowledge on this, but let's say upgrading to like LED lights, right, and things like that, that would, as things change, right?
Yeah, so right now, the standard that is out there is LED lighting, which lasts much longer than your halogens and strobes. They're brighter, they're crisper. It's something that obviously is gonna be around for a while. We've got 4 trucks in for a remount through Ridgeview, or with Ridgeview. 3 different vendors are doing them. I have yet to actually have to replace any of our LED lights. If one LED is out, I kind of just say, it's not that big of a deal. But once we start to get to 2 or 3 LEDs, and that's the individual diode within the light, then we're talking it probably should be replaced.
You know, the lights really aren't that,
What's that?
the lights really aren't that big of a cost, so.
No, they're fairly inexpensive, but going from a halogen to an LED, there is a price increase, obviously.
Do we have any halogen lights on our ambulances now?
The current one that you're looking at replacing or switching out
Yeah.
is all halogen
Oh, wow.
and a couple strobes on the back.
Yeah, it's a 2008.
Yep.
So when they do that, and I'm just curious, what do they do with the parts of it when they swap them out? The old parts, what happens with them?
Well, most of it's your chassis. It's dependent on who you select for your remount. Sometimes that remounter will give you a cost break on the cost of the remount and then turn around and repurpose that chassis for
Yeah.
someone else. But if you're switching out lights, you can request to keep the lights. They're yours. You paid for them. Once you switch to LEDs, it doesn't really pay to try and put a halogen back in place. Most of the light sizes are all universal, so if you're replacing what a halogen light is there on the side, you could replace it with an LED and you're not gonna actually incur any changes whatsoever. It'll be the same size, so there won't be much labor involved in doing that.
off the top of your head, you know what a light replacement would cost?
I think they're around $2,400
Okay,
for the LED. But again, they're gonna last many, many years,
sure.
so
What's remount typically cost compared to new? What are you seeing on yours?
you could probably pay about a third of a new. Yeah.
Kind of depends on how many different big changes you're
Yeah.
gonna do, like if they have to alter the box a lot, big changes like lights, there's a lot of variables, right? So it's hard to kind of say, what's this amount? Because even that last quote that we did for Gaylord's truck ended up being a lot higher. We both said that's a lot
Yeah.
higher than we kind of anticipated it to be.
And there's no other big changes in the box, being it's that old, 2008 till now, that there's a,
There's always
Better-
the chance, once they separate it and they lift it up, to look at it, but it didn't look like it from our angles.
Yeah.
but equipment-wise or technology, other things in there that make the
No,
job
there's
easier
no
or
main
nothing?
changes.
Change,
Mm-mm.
okay.
Wiring is, I mean, it's the same as a house, you know, you can go for many, many, many decades with the same wiring. So there wouldn't really be a need to do that. If you switch over to LEDs, obviously you're gonna have a lower draw on the electrical system, so you're gonna be able to get away with a little more. You know, but you can, one vendor that we use actually does everything. They can strip that whole box out and completely rebuild it with new electrics, new modules, anything you want.
Do these companies provide another ambulance so that one's in getting?
There's
What-
varying degrees of what you can do with a loaner. Some of them provide a no-cost loaner for X amount of time. Others say mileage-wise, this is what we want. Typically, you're not looking at a great vehicle that's a loaner. That's something that has been heavily used. You have 2 trucks, I would recommend shying away from actually getting a loaner, just simply because you're paying for something that's gonna sit there a lot.
So you just have the one down here while that one's.
Correct. And there's always the possibility that if call volume picks up and we're noticing things that, you know, you guys are using a backup more often, we could probably ship one down.
If we had a depth in the core, we would just bring
Yep.
one down.
What's your success rates with remounts? I mean, you're the fleet manager, right?
I am the fleet
Okay,
manager,
so I mean,
yes.
what's your preference?
99% effective on remounts. Which means when we send a truck in for remount, it comes back just as good as new.
And everybody's
We
great.
remount everything, and you have no idea that it was a remount.
And I mean, Ridgeview's been happy with the remounts they've seen, and
Yeah, we've had to branch out who we're using simply because we're now at a point that we're remounting upwards of 7 a year. So,
I just want to make sure I understand. The engine's a brand-new engine, the transmission, the differential.
yes, the
all that's
whole
new.
cab. So your seating, your dashboard layout, your engine, your transmission, your suspension, all of that is new from front to back. The only thing you're doing is lifting that box off, pulling the old chassis out, putting a new chassis underneath.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a pretty good deal.
There are some companies that actually look for boxes to remount versus buying new because it is such a cost-effective way of continuing to keep those trucks on the road as long as they're in good shape, which like I said, 99% of it looks good to us. We won't know for sure until it lifts off, right? There's always that potential, no guarantee, but.
Just as an anecdotal, I've told Sarah, I think I've told Steve, there is a company in New York. We used to run what was called a slant side ambulance. That was a product of the 70s from Braun. And there is a company in New York that continues to remount those, and they are actively searching for those boxes.
So 50 years later.
50 years later, they're looking for them, and they're paying a premium.
So what happens with the chassis? Do you get credit for that, or does the company give you anything for it, or what usually?
It would kind of depend on how you as a city want to handle it. It's your chassis. So you can have them pull the old chassis out and you can repurpose that chassis for public works. You can repurpose that chassis for anything you want. You could then turn around and sell it on auction. You could put it up. I mean, it's only got 55,000 miles on it. So it's still a pretty good vehicle. It is a diesel. It is, from an ambulance perspective, we used to use them a lot simply because we thought power, torque, longevity. Unfortunately, what we find is diesel engine ambulances are not good when they sit around. So they have to keep moving. So that's one of the downsides of this truck right now is it does spend a lot of time sitting in the garage. Sarah and I have had many conversations that when she comes down for a shift or I come down for a shift, we fire it up and we drive around. Last time I was down here, I actually fired it up myself and drove it to go get my lunch and drive it back because it needs to be moved. Yeah. So
do you know what engine is in that one, that diesel?
that would be, I believe, the 6.2, being that it's from 2008, if I remember correctly.
Maybe make it into a pickup truck for the city.
Yeah, you could turn it into a flatbed. They do. I can tell you that I've researched one of our current remounts. You can find the cab enclosure for around $2,400, and then put a stake bed on it. And I had actually kind of wanted to do that to one of our remounts.
So tonight,
Yeah, tonight we just want consensus to replacing the ambulance in 2027 with a remounted chassis, if that's what we decide.
Yeah, this is, at this point in time, just looking to, for a consensus, if this is continuing to move along on this direction. You don't have to take a motion or anything like that at this point in time, since we got a couple years out yet. So we're just going to kind of keep working towards that, if that's what you want.
There are two things I would like to mention. A remount can be done in 90 to 120 days. I have one outlier that's been a little longer than that. I won't go into depth as to how long it's been. The most recent one I sent off, we did send it to a company that does them in Michigan. They are assembly line, and they guarantee 90 to 120 days. And so they started on that truck last week, and they've already got it torn apart as of this week.
And
So-
sending us kind of pictures of how that process
Yep.
is going.
So there is that, when it comes to remounts, that once you get your time slot and you get everything lined up and you get your start date set, this particular company will give you an end date of when you can expect that vehicle back, and it's usually 90 to 120 days. One of my other one is hitting about 120 days, but it should be back pretty soon. Versus new, from order to delivery, like I said, that's upwards of 2 years.
And the last one was just over 2 years. So just know that that's a huge time difference. there.
It is. So what are the council's thoughts? Do we have a consensus, or?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you
Yeah.
guys know best, you use it and you deal with it and everything, and if you guys, that's your kind of suggestion, the way it sounds, your recommendation, I'm good with it.
Well, I like the recommendation because it saves the city a lot of money as well. I mean, if the only thing that you're using again is that box, I don't know what could have gone wrong with it.
Yeah, usually
Always a
they're
chance.
pretty good. I mean, we've had one that was just, we've had a couple that were in accidents, and once they're repaired, you can't tell, you know, so.
I do think we should do the LED lights and stuff. for
Oh,
that,
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna have it for 15+ years probably,
Mhm.
and eventually you're gonna do it anyways. If you're spending, I mean, 150, what's another couple thousand just to make it new?
You know,
Unless there's any other major things that would have to be updated inside the box over the years.
No, I think when we had the one vendor come out and take a look at it, he kind of said, this is really in good shape. I agree, it is in really good shape from the box standpoint. So there wasn't much that we wanted updated to the inside. We did recommend, obviously, upgrading our lighting on the outside, switching from the light bar that's on there to the more standard pancake lights across the front. There are some other things that I had recommended that we're trying with our ambulances. One of the biggest complaints, and I can tell you for 20 years, it's not changed, is the ride. We haven't personally done it, but I've ridden in ambulances that have air ride. We've used liquid ride. We're gonna try another system called More Ride. That's a non-hydraulic system that takes the punch out of the road bumps without the hassle of the liquid ride. Liquid ride is a great system. The downside is it's good for about 75 to 100,000 miles. And once you, for lack of a better term, toast that suspension, you burst a hydraulic line or a pump fails or a sensor goes out, you've lost your suspension. It will ride its axle right up onto the frame, and it is very rough. So that's one of the reasons we're getting rid of it. We've had a couple of those fail. I personally am looking forward to seeing what this More Ride suspension does for us. But no matter which way we go, that would probably be something I would recommend you guys consider, is some sort of suspension change or upgrade for the rear end.
Is that something you can get from the factory, or is that an aftermarket?
That's an aftermarket, and usually it's installed prior to putting the mod back onto the newer chassis. Yep.
Well, we can maybe just have a price for it when it comes down to actually doing it, but
Yeah.
I think for sure, I mean, at least LEDs and stuff like that, I think should be included, but as far as that, maybe have an option, we can talk about it more then.
who knows what great system will come out before then.
Before
Right,
then.
yeah. Yeah, there'll be hovercrafts by then.
Drones.
I mean, I don't know if it helps either, but I mean, it would be nice, I mean, it's a Ford now, the other one, right?
Mhm.
And to stick with that, and I think you guys have mostly Fords anyways, not trying to push, it's just nice to keep your fleet the same.
And a lot of the lights, when we sat, John and I spent hours going around it and trying to keep both rigs instead of them not looking the same, right? Kind of condensing to make them look the same. So Another thing to kind of think about for you guys is if you wanted to have a certain look to it, right? Do you want it to match the other truck? Do you mind if it's independent of the other one? You know, there's exterior paint, design, decals, that kind of thing. But we did spend some time to try to match lights, so it did match that other look. So it just has a clean mirror image, right, of both trucks.
I think that's a good idea. I don't know what you guys think, but our cop cars all match, and most of our fire trucks are relatively matching, so makes it look nice on, when they're going around town.
Look sharp.
So when the rig would be, or the chassis changed out, this would become our number 1 truck and rig then?
Yes,
The other
and
one
flip.
would be the backup.
And what year is our other one? Can you remind me?
16.
2016, yeah.
And that one, I believe, is due, and see if you can correct me, but I think it's 2032.
Right.
Yeah, that one has 63,000 on it, I believe, as of today.
Okay.
It might be kind of a weird question. I'm obviously new on council. Is there a reason we don't just have Ridgeview trucks? I mean, versus just keeping Gaylord ones?
That's a good question. It
just
was when we
give like a quick
originally signed the contract.
Summary?
That was just part of it, just to keep it, and Ridgeview didn't want to push it because that was a donated rig and we understood that respect, right? And because of that, they wanted to keep that donation on there.
Okay. I was just
That
curious.
was the only reason. So yeah, it's totally up to you guys, however you want it to look.
Okay, well, I think you have we have consensus to replace the chassis, update the lights, and we'll talk about the suspension upgrade when we get a little bit closer to that time.
That's good.
Sound good?
Yeah, we'll be in touch then.
Thank you all for your time and for
Thank
coming
you.
here tonight and for your report and the wonderful work you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is city engineer, and Justin Black is here to talk about our future capital improvement project plans update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I jump into the drawing that's in front of you, I'd like to just take a minute here to pull it up on the screen so I can highlight a few things, so bear with me. All right, just for a way of introduction for those watching on TV, my name is Justin Black and I serve as a city engineer. In front of us this evening is the future capital improvement projects plan. It's something that we've worked through with the city since about 2017. So it's a plan that we've developed, and each year we review it about this time of year with, sit down with Steve and Ty and take a look at things, make a few changes, update the costs. So we'd like to this evening just go through each of the projects listed on the plan, and be happy to answer any questions as we go along here. I will say for the most part, the plan it remains about the same as last year. There's a few additions and a couple of changes, but for the most part, it's largely the same plan that we looked at last year. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the map here to each of the project areas, and I'm going to start with the County State Aid Highway 21. This is a realignment of a county road. And it's a project that we actually started a few years ago and have pushed back the construction timeline. It's a cooperative agreement project with Sibley County, so the city's entered into a cooperative agreement, cost sharing for the project. Right now, if you drive out there, it's still a gravel road, but the end project would follow this orange alignment and bring County State Aid Highway 21 down to Trunk Highway 5. And then Lincoln Avenue, or CASA 10, which used to be 21, would then tee into County Road 21. So the total project cost estimate is about $4.6 to $5 million. The city's share of that is about $800,000. So most of the cost would be covered by Sibley County for this realignment. A majority of the city cost, nearly all of it, is extending underground utilities, the sanitary sewer and the water main. If you take a look at the map up on the screen, the sanitary sewer and water main currently end right about where my hand is here on the screen, if you can see that, right where it says Nicollet Avenue. So those would be extended over and across CASA 21 to allow for future development in this area and service those future parcels. So that's the first project on the list. The next project, which we've identified, and that project has a date of 2026. So that's the date that the project has been shifted to, and is currently the construction timeline. The rest of the projects, for the most part, the street projects are just labeled 1 through 5, and we did prioritize them as far as what would be priority number 1 project, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So priority project number 1 is 3rd Street, and I'm zooming in on it here. That would be from the highway, from Highway 5 and 19 north all the way up to Lincoln Avenue. And for the most part, this would be a complete reconstruction. And I'll maybe zoom in just a hair more. There we go. So currently, if you drive the roadway, the surfacing is in bad condition. The road has been overlaid at one point in time in the past. But when we take a look at the underground utilities, they're in equally poor condition. There's some of the older utilities left in the city. So this would be replacing the sanitary sewer, the water main, and the storm sewer, and then new curb and gutter and street surfacing. So that project, we're estimating between $2.8 and $3 million. There would be special assessments levied on the project per the city's policy, and we're estimating those assessments would total about $600,000. Project area number 2 is just south of that. And this is one change that we made last year. Project area number 1 extended all the way down to Sibley Avenue. It seemed to make more sense to terminate project number 1 at the highway. So project area number 2 would be Sibley, and then a block of 3rd and a block of 5th. A little different picture here in that the road surface, if you go and drive it, it's different than other road surfaces in the city. It's a concrete surface. It's very old, but it's in okay condition. The underground utilities are some of the oldest that are left in the city, in the downtown corridor. So they're in need of replacement. They're at the end of their useful life. We're hoping they can last a little bit longer without any major repairs. But this, again, would be a complete street and utility reconstruction. We'd reconstruct the sidewalks in the downtown area through this corridor. So we're estimating this project to be in the range of $3 to $3.4 million. Again, there would be special assessments levied, about $640,000 in special assessments. Project area number 3 is just north of that. It's the area just south of the courthouse complex. It includes a number of streets here, High Avenue, Jefferson, and then about a block and a half of 5th. Most of these streets, we've completed the 1-inch maintenance overlay on these. So from a surfacing standpoint, we're holding them together like we've talked about at past meetings. But again, as we look ahead into the future, there are some underground utility that needs to be replaced, namely water main in this area that we would complete. Also some storm sewer on Jefferson Avenue. So project cost estimate, again, $3 to $3.2 million with about $600,000 being assessed. Project area number 4 is over on the west side of the community. It's the 10th Street south of Lincoln Avenue, and then about 3 blocks of Main Avenue would be project area number 4. Again, this is an area where we've completed some 1-inch overlays in the last 3 or 4 years to hold that pavement together. But again, some utility needs, underground utility needs. These would be complete reconstruction projects. We've also budgeted for, as part of 10th Street, reconstructing the roadway and the curb and gutter on the east side, and then adding curb on the west side, just like it would mirror the project that was done in 2018 north of Lincoln. So that's included in the budget. $3.5 to $3.7 million with about $700,000 in assessments. Project area number 5, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. This was a number of street areas that we identified throughout the city, and I'll just start over on the left-hand side here. Sibley Avenue, this would likely be a reclaim and overlay. So the curb and gutter's in good condition, but the pavement's in poor condition. We'd grind up that pavement and repave it. Moving to the right, there's a 1-block segment of commercial. Again, a similar project here. We'd look at a reclaim and overlay, and same with this short segment of 2nd Street. Jumping up to the north here, Carmel Avenue. Again, utilities were constructed in the early 80s, and we believe those are in good condition, so this would be more of a resurfacing or pavement improvement project. And then the last segment in project area number 5 would be a new street, an extension of Shoreview Lane. We need to update our aerial here a little bit, but there's this segment of Shoreview Lane where my hand was constructed back in 2021. And this would be an extension to take Shoreview Lane across the county ditch and allow us to access an expansion for the industrial park so that we could expand utilities and street to some vacant land on the east side of the ditch. So those are the 5 street projects. Now moving to projects that aren't necessarily tied to streets, but still infrastructure. I'll take you over to this large area that's shaded kind of in a tan color. It's a large rectangular area. We've identified this over on the right-hand side as Project CIPP, and CIPP stands for Cured in Place Pipe. So this would be a pipe lining project where we would line the sanitary sewer pipes in that neighborhood. This is also the neighborhood where you're looking at doing the inflow and infiltration. So it would align with making improvements to that sanitary sewer system to reduce the inflow and infiltration. Estimating that project in the range of 1.7 to 1.9 million. Most of the sewers in that neighborhood are in the alley, so a lining project would allow us to improve those and without having to dig in the alleys. I'm going to move us to the top right-hand side of the sheet here if you're following along on the printed sheet. The next 3 projects, again, not street projects, but still important infrastructure. The top one is Street Shop. We're listing that with a year of 2026 completion date. 1.2 to 1.4 million is the estimate that we're putting on the Street Shop. Again, this was a project that was looked at about a half a dozen years ago, right before COVID hit. We had taken a look at some options for a street shop layout. So that's just an extension of that project. The next one on the list is a project we've talked with the council not too long ago, the Lake Titlow Dam. The city has received a $500,000 appropriation from the state legislature, and we're estimating the project cost to be about $1 million. Again, the timeline here, 2027 for the Lake Titlow Dam. And the last project I wanted to report on is the city's water plant. The original water plant building that's on the south edge of town was constructed in 1991. There was a filter expansion in 2001. And the city has done a great job of maintaining that. There's been some smaller projects along the way to replace some of the components. But when we start to look at a water treatment plant that's 25 to 30 years old, it's time to look at a more comprehensive update of all of the systems within that plant. And that's what really this project would encompass is really an overhaul of the existing plant, about 1.4 to 1.6 million. So I know I gave you a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'd be happy to go back to any of the projects and answer questions. Again, this is an annual update that we do just to kind of lay out future projects. A lot of these don't have timelines on them. And of course, it'd be advanced as funding becomes available. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
With regard to the water plant, I know we recently have updated a lot of the controls inside that building. I guess are you talking about a brand new building, or are you talking about just redoing things that need to get done inside there?
It would be the second one that you mentioned, redoing the things that are inside. So that we've developed a list of things that need to be replaced or improved. We've met with Ty a couple of times. Our water engineer, Chad Katzenberger, has been down and walked through the plant with Ty. And like I said, some of those things, like you mentioned, the controls have been updated, but there's a number of other things that remain. But it's important to note, it would not be a new building or a new structure, but replacing some of those inside components that just, after time, wear out.
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty bad inside. I guess I don't know what other plants look like, but it seems like there's like a little rust and stuff in there. I don't know if that's natural.
I think this, like I mentioned earlier, I think the city's done a great job of maintaining it. But
Yeah.
when you get to 25 or 30 years on these plants, it's time to remodel it. maybe a similar analogy was a discussion you just had a minute ago about ambulances. When the ambulance gets to a certain age, certain mileage, it's time to look at a replacement or an overhaul. That's really what this would be.
And obviously, everything has to keep going when that operation
Yes.
is taking place, so.
Yep. So there's ways to, the plant has 2 filters
Yeah.
and duplicity on the pumps, so there's ways to do the reconstruction or the remodel and keep everything working and up to speed, so.
And when it's done, it looks like brand new and it's good for,
Probably another 25 to 30 years. So that's usually the life expectancy of those plants and the components, is that 25 to 30-year timeline when you do that type of replacement.
Has there been any more talk with the state as far as relining Highway 19 to 21 there? I know there was talk about that with the roundabout and everything.
Yes, so we did have a discussion just not too long ago about that. They have pushed that Highway 19 project back to 2031, I believe, so they've pushed that back in their schedule. So it's still a number of years out, and we still have that layout or plan to realign that as part of the discussion at least. Now, they haven't committed to saying absolutely we're going to make that realignment, but they're well aware of it. And with construction still out another 5 or 6 years, there's time to be able to continue those discussions, absolutely.
So like if they'd put a roundabout in there, would that be all state cost or what?
Typically, it's split by the individual legs coming into the intersection and who has jurisdiction of those. So in this case, 3 of the legs would be MnDOT and then 1 leg would be county. So it would probably be like a 25-75% split, more than likely. But yeah, excellent question and something that's not shown on this drawing, but because that would be more of a MnDOT project, but something they're well aware of. Steve and I have met with MnDOT a couple of times to talk about it. And as we get closer to that construction timeline, probably more meetings with MnDOT to talk about that change.
As far as that goes, you're saying that if they do the roundabout, it probably won't be till that 2031 time?
That's correct. Yep.
I mean, at the very least, it'd be nice to at least get turn lanes in there for the time being. I mean, that intersection gets really busy.
Yes, yes.
You can push for it too, but something's gotta be done.
Yeah, the MnDOT did a corridor study here about 4 or 5 years ago and did some traffic counts. And you know, one thing that came out of that study was the concerns that the city has about all of these different access points, and you know, specifically the way that Melrose and Highway 19 come into 5. It's a skewed intersection, very dangerous, lots of close calls. So, you know, I think the city has done some due diligence in pushing the issue and saying we've got some safety concerns here. There's some documents that MnDOT has on file showing these different types of improvements that we're talking about. I think the main thing that's probably not moving these forward is funding. And MnDOT would admit as much as there's just not funding available for all of the projects in the state.
As far as Third Street goes, how many tons would that road be?
We talked about keeping it a truck route, so it'd be a 10-ton designation. It's something that we can take a look at as we get closer to the final design. We also talked about narrowing it, so it's really a wide road, wider than what it needs to be. So we could take a look at both of those things as we move it forward. It is an old county route. And most of the routes that we design in the city are 7-ton is a standard. However, we have built roads to higher standards depending on the type of traffic that goes on them.
Is there much of a cost savings by going to 7 or 8 ton versus having the truck route?
We'd have to take a look at the numbers. I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head what the cost savings might be. But by narrowing the roadway, we could save some cost.
Just
From
with,
that
I mean,
perspective.
Lincoln Avenue goes right by it. I mean, you just put a no truck route sign there and
Yep.
have everybody use Lincoln instead then.
I live on Third Street, there's very little truck traffic. That'd be FedEx and UPS are like the biggest, and then
I think
garbage
Monarch.
trucks are like the biggest trucks that are on that road.
So I think it's something we definitely could take a look at as we move towards the final design, and if it makes sense to make it a standard 7-ton street, I think that would be a good decision. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the occasional FedEx truck or school bus or, of course, a garbage truck can't drive on it. It's just that it's not a designated truck route. So definitely something we'd take a look at, and I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, there is a lot of school bus traffic in the morning because of where they pick up at Emmanuel Lutheran and then cut over to Sibley East. So I think every bus in the morning at some point takes Third Street.
It is a really busy street, and even after the patch last year, it didn't really, I mean, it seemed like it had a lot of problems after the patch even, so it's a rough shape.
The surfacing is in bad condition, and it's project priority number one. We've got that first on the list, and I think all of these streets that we have on the list here have needs, but that's definitely priority number one. And again, if we had funding available, we'd advance it sooner. I think everyone in the room would like to see it done next year, but with funding constraints, we just can't do that. But as the funding picture becomes more clear, we can take a look at trying to assign some actual construction dates to the map here.
With CASA 21 project, will there be any assessments with that project?
Yes, so there will be assessments on that project if we follow the city's assessment policy, which we would do. Some of those will be deferred assessments because of the ag land that's out there, but there will be assessments on that project.
In respect to that project, and next year, one of the things we wanted to bring up this evening for your discussion and thoughts was in reference to the street shop. As Justin pointed out, we've been talking about that for half a dozen years. And Ty came up with a plan, or the guys came up with a plan to do something smaller than was originally planned and also maintain and keep the current building. And Ty could speak to that better than I as far as that proposal. But we would like you to possibly consider doing that next year as part of the financing then for overall financing for both projects. They'd be obviously separate projects, but we could bundle them in the same financing bill. And it does help that, as Justin pointed out, the CASA 21 project is primarily just water and sewer, so it would not impact the levy compared to the street shop, which would be basically a levy-supported project.
What would be the the benefit of not building that bigger building and getting rid of that old one that we're saying right now is no good?
It's the cost. Ty, maybe this is the time you could come up. But that was the idea, is to downsize in order to make it much more affordable. I mean, I think the cost was like twice as much with removing the existing building and building a brand new one that would house everything.
But
Yeah.
we don't want that old building now though, right?
Well, originally, when we first proposed, the first building was gonna be 66 feet by 200 feet. It was gonna be a big one.
Okay.
And we were always told that the walls are rotten off of it and all that stuff. And Tom and Justin actually opened that up early last year, opened one of the walls up, and it's not near as bad as what everybody says it was. Since those guys did the landscaping project route, they had to keep the water away from that building now. So what we did is like, well, let's keep this street building and actually get rid of, so we don't have to store anything out at the compost site where the police keep their impound stuff. What we'd like to do is basically put a wall through that old building and give the police one side and us keep the other side and have a smaller new building overall to save some money.
So that would kind of be like your cold storage where you guys keep your
Actually,
Christmas
it would
decorations.
be, that side would be exclusively water and sewer stuff. So the jetter and the pumps and all the parts and stuff like that would stay, and like Christmas decorations, all the stuff that gets stuck out there right now would be in there.
Would we be able to get rid of that building, the one that you have the decorations in now?
Oh, yeah.
By the continent?
Yeah, there won't be nothing left in there by the time,
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's not a very good, it's not a great building at all, so. That was kind of the reasoning behind it, to kind of, when prices kind of exploded, we kind of explored some different ways to kind of try to get it done, but still do something, you know? So that big building kind of went away, and we kind of shrunk it down. Now we're at 60 by 120, so almost half the size, so.
Well, as part of building that new building, you can kind of re-slope the ground and stuff around there and kind of do a lot project, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because actually during that building of the building, because I haven't talked to Justin about this yet, but we need to do some kind of storm sewer intake, so that water has somewhere to go, because it's just where it kind of pools, it's kind of at a bad spot. But you're not talking like a whole lot more work, so, but it'd be nice to do that all at once, so you got some drainage in between those two buildings, so.
Because ultimately you'd have problems with the old one then, you know, the water's running into it.
Right, yeah, we actually, when Leighton worked here, those guys did the re-sloping. I think they took 1.5 feet of dirt away from that building that was on top of the walls. So whenever it rained, the water would just run right through the building, so. And those guys kind of pretty much fixed that, so.
Nice. Would that money also then consist of the wall that you're talking about in the old building, as well as like maybe repainting it inside there or something?
We had talked about, well, it's kind of like what the fire department did last year. It needs cleaned.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. I mean, it's still good metal. I'd be more concerned with the outside metal than the inside. But when we do put if we do put that wall in there, the only side that'd be heated would be where the water and sewer stuff, where the impound stuff would be unheated. So basically it'd be cold storage for pretty much just the police exclusively.
You'd probably want to have some sort of dehumidifier in there, because it seems like when you keep cars and that, they tend to mold.
Oh yeah, you could put one in there pretty
Yeah.
easily, yeah. Yep. So,
That's what I thought.
Yep.
all right.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you. I guess something, a little project would be nice to have on there too, would be that, I think it's industrial, just between Channel Seed and, the villa there. It'd be on the southwest side of town. On this map, it'd be just on the north side of that green roof building. I think it was milled as part of 8th Street. I mean, I don't know if there's a way, if we just vacate it and make it grass, or, you know, do something to kind of clean it up.
Yes, so the area that we're discussing is this section right here. And it was, the pavement was ground up, and it was essentially turned into a gravel street with curb and gutter. So it's not on the list this year, but it's something that we could take a look at for a future project to pave that. I know the discussion was there's not a lot of traffic on it. So the gravel surface, it was something that we're trying to see if that can hold up to the amount of traffic that's on there. It's an occasional car. But if we want to move towards a pavement of that, we definitely could add it to the list.
I mean, I know we're working on vacating tower. Is that maybe another option there? I mean, Michael Foods owns that one building anyways, so I mean, with not much traffic there, I don't think there's much for utility, maybe an old water line, but that's looped anyways. Just an idea, instead of paving a road that hardly gets used.
Something we can take a look at.
I don't know what you guys think of that, but I don't want to spend, you know, $500,000 on a road that gets used by 4 cars a day.
Right, and I think that was the exact reasoning why we just left it gravel, is there's just not a lot of traffic on it.
Yeah, and I mean, Ty plows snow in that end of town, and it's kind of a. There's no utilities in that road. Oh, perfect. So it'd be.
It's just the water and sewer service to that Channel CC.
So it'd be a private line anyways, basically, or make it one. Just some food for thought, I guess.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, in reference to the shop, I guess that's what we were hoping to get a feeling about where you'd like to go on that. We're proposing that we would look at doing that next year. And if that's the case, if you agree to such, then we would need to get going on that. Because we'd have to do plans and specs for the building. We'd have to get all that done. And
How big are you thinking now? It sounds like you downsized, I mean, rough
It's at 60 by 120.
would be the new one?
Yep.
I think we've been kicking that can down the road for a while, and we talked about it before, and the need for the shop. And I think it makes sense to do it now as opposed to waiting. The only thing I would say is that whatever improvements you want to make to that other building, Ty, that money gets included in this, so that it's all done at once, whether it's the exterior of that old building or whatever it is, so that it's all lumped in on that one project.
Did we get some insurance money on that building for side? None, I thought one.
They looked at it, but we didn't get anything.
Nothing, I thought one side.
It was too bad.
And I agree with what Tony's saying. I think, if we are gonna, so often people build and they wish they would have gone bigger, and I don't want us to regret this in 5 years. So like if improvements need to be made to the existing building, let's do it right.
I would agree too, to get that up to where it needs to be, that the other building.
Then I think it would match too. If you did
Yeah.
some steel on the outside, just make them match, make them look nice. Maybe put some signage on it so people know where it's
Yeah,
at.
and the guys do a great job at taking care of that stuff, so
Right.
it'll look good for a long time.
Okay, so you just want consensus for that? If so,
Yeah.
I think you have it.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
guess if that's the consensus, then I guess the next question would be, we would be looking at hiring an architect. We'd have to, being it's a government building, for the building permit itself, we're going to be required to have plans, and it's going to be signed by an architect, so architectural drawings. My question is, SEH can provide those services. There's certainly other capable companies out there as well that could provide that services. My recommendation would that we'd go out and solicit quotes for that service, and because it is kind of relatively a simple building. Granted, there's a number of amenities to it, but overall it's kind of basic. I think there's a number of companies out there that could provide that service for us. Certainly, I think SEH could provide it as well. I'd certainly recommend that we'd solicit a quote from them. Certainly, you could just simply go with SEH too. That's an option.
Is there a certain price point that we have to do more as far as getting that stuff involved? Like having an architect versus just having it drawn up?
We're going to have the plan signed by an architect, just for the building permit alone.
Are you saying like the certain dollar amount for the bid for the architect?
Yeah, I mean, just being it's basically a square building.
Yeah,
It's
but
not
because of the
necessarily
building
rocket,
permit,
yeah.
we're going to have drawings. It's going to have to be architectural.
We work with SEH, I guess.
Would SEH be overseeing the build itself then, separate from the designing of the plans?
That would be something we could talk about. At this stage, just looking at the design.
I guess why I'm asking that is if they're gonna be overseeing it, it would make sense for them, in my mind, to come up with the building plans.
But you could do it both ways. Whoever you would, if you hired somebody else, you could still have them do that service as well.
Oh, okay.
This is just a pole barn we're talking, right, kind of thing?
Yeah, it'll be a wood
Yep.
structure. It won't be a pole barn per
Well,
se, but it'll be a wood
Wood,
structure.
wood frame,
Wood
not
frame
like a
building.
steel concrete, I guess is what I'm
Correct, yep.
talking. I guess I think pole barn. Ribs.
I know what you mean.
I mean, there's no harm in getting bids, but
There isn't, but I'm wondering, there's probably not gonna be a lot of difference in them, and we're probably gonna have SEH involved if there's gotta be some groundwork done and storm. So it might be easier to
I
have
think-
one company doing,
well, there's
Everything.
certain comfort in having SEH do it because they're familiar with
with
every inch
everything.
of our city.
Right,
I kind of agree with Scott.
But
I mean, we've been working with SEH for a while too.
Yeah, they're our
Yeah.
city engineer. I agree.
yeah, it doesn't matter to me
I just
either way.
don't see that we're gonna get a big difference in soliciting bids for architecture, design, and building. I just don't, in something that size, I just don't see a big difference in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much to it, so. Don't let us down, Justin.
maybe he has one on the shelf he'll just give to us.
Yeah, from the last one they did.
It's definitely something we'd be happy to help the city with, and we've got architectural staff, as Steve had mentioned, so we would get those folks involved, and then any site grading or storm sewer work, we would have my team work on as part of the project, so.
I think, I mean, make sure, I guess Ty and the other guys are involved too. I think, they're probably gonna be in it for a number of years. Especially, I mean, Tom's got a background in construction and Ty's a director. So, I mean, I think having SEH do it, we already have the relationship. I think it's good for our guys to, you guys can work together then.
That'd be one of the first things we'd do is sit down with Ty and the rest of the staff and make sure we're heading down the right path as far as building dimensions and other things. Even though it is pretty straightforward, we want to make sure that it's meeting their needs and expectations and within budget for what Steve has in mind.
So, do you need a motion?
No, I just need a consensus because they'll come back with a proposal and that's what you would approve then at that
Sure,
time.
let's move on this then, so you have consensus.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have ordinance number 373, an ordinance amending the city zoning code. This is our second reading. So I believe all we need is a motion to adopt ordinance number 373, amending the city of Gaylord zoning code.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Padilla, seconded by Kufal. Any discussion or questions about the changes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to ordinance number
summary.
the 374, the ordinance amending the city of Gaylord zoning map. This is the second
me.
reading to approve, to approve the summary of, and its publication.
373.
Yes, we're gonna go back. Let's start all over. So we need a motion to approve the summary of ordinance number 373 and its publication.
That's the previous one, right?
We already adopted the ordinance, now we have to approve the summary. I skipped it on to the next one. I was looking at this agenda, not this one, so.
Make a motion.
So we have a motion by Padilla, or by Kufal, seconded by Rose. I'm all flustered now. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we can move to 10B on our agenda, ordinance number 374, an ordinance amending the city of Gaylord zoning map. And this is also the second reading. So we just need a motion to amend.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Padilla. Do we?
Second.
Seconded by Kufal. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And now we need a motion to approve the summary of ordinance number 374 and its publication.
Make a motion.
A motion from Kufal. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to new business, we have 11A, administration staff job description updates, and I will turn that over to Steve.
So this is in our line here with updating our job descriptions. We have 3 more this evening. These all 3 went through the Personnel Committee, and they're recommending approval of them. Also, kind of the same kind of approach that we've taken with all the updates with the job descriptions. I've prepared them and then asked the staff members to review their respective job description and taken their comments, suggestions, and updating the descriptions accordingly. So tonight, for your consideration is the updated job descriptions for the positions as follows: city clerk / finance officer, deputy city clerk, and our utility billing clerk administrative assistant. So these would be our staff people from our city hall here. So again, the personnel committee looked at these. Some respects, the updates have to do with we're reformatting the job description slightly. We really kind of look closely at the minimum and preferred qualifications for each position. And then I guess I just wanted to share the last time these were updated was in 2019. So those are the 3 that are recommended for approval from the Personnel Committee.
were there any major changes, I guess?
Not really, nothing significant, even in the qualifications, just slight changes. So in these particular ones, we didn't have a lot of changes.
I just think it's a good practice to every 5 years review job descriptions, make sure we got everything covered, so it's kind of just procedural. So if no one has any questions, need a motion to approve the updated city clerk, finance officer, deputy city clerk, and utility billing clerk, administrative assistant job descriptions.
I have just one quick question.
Sure.
I mean, just as far as maybe Jolene and Lori's position, I know a couple years back, like Tom and my dad's position basically became the same grade and the same thing. And those two positions are pretty similar too. I mean, just, do we have one position and two people, or would that simplify things? as far
I
as
think there
pay scales
is a
go?
difference. You know, they definitely have different, their primary duties are definitely different. You know, in the public works, there is some things that they do separately, but there is also an awful lot of overlap. Where here, there might be some overlap, like with the customer service, but generally speaking, you know, our staff can fill in absence of others, but primarily, if everybody's here, they have their own duties that they focus on.
Just out of curiosity, building off that, if you cross-leveled, like Jolene to do Lori's job, is that something that would bump her up potentially, or, because it seems like if, you know, if Lori takes off for a while, or the other Lori's gone, sometimes we struggle in those areas, or maybe something can't get done. Is that something that you guys are working on, so that?
I would say the cross-training right now has been working pretty well. Fortunately, we have a pretty experienced staff, and they're very talented, so they're able to handle those staff shortages. And we've had some practice too, so I think it's been going okay at this point. I still believe that there is definitely a separation there of different duties, you know, and so I wouldn't try to intermingle those into one position. I think at this point in time, based on what their primary duties are, they're definitely separate.
And I think, we talked about that, when we did, at one point we talked about that, because we talked about her position is, the experience needed to do hers, that it would be pretty hard for somebody to just step in and do that without some prior experience. I know we just talked about that not long ago, that there is.
Yeah,
there
that
is
we would more than likely contract with, you know, Abdo or something.
something,
in-
so
Yeah.
that,
in her
The fund
absence.
accounting that's a little more unique. Not everybody has that background. In fact, it's very hard to find somebody out there to fill a role like that, because there's so few people that, if they're looking for a new job, that have that experience. So someday, whenever she decides to leave it, it'll probably be a little bit challenging if we're looking to fill the position from outside, especially. Could be anyway.
Right, and that's part of that, I guess that's why I was asking about that cross-leveling too, so that you start working on those issues now, so that if she is gone, somebody can help her paying the bills, or, you know. if
There are
Lori-
certainly some duties that can be done, don't get me wrong. But there are some right now that probably are beyond, you know, our existing staff. But again, you know, she's been gone too, for leaves, and we've been able to make it work without hiring like an outside company, consulting company or something like that to help us through that.
I guess I just see a lot of similarities, I guess, in those two positions. I think it'd be simple, to simplify it up, just like the public works position. Have
To
one
combine
same-
'em?
I mean, what was that?
Well, I'm sorry, what was?
I mean, there's a lot of crossover between them two, I guess is what I see. And that's why I was just curious if there's a reason to have two separate positions. I know you said there's a lot of differences, but there's differences in your parks versus your streets as well. You know, and those two are generally the same. There's a lot of crossover. I know usually when like Lori During's gone, there's just a lot of crossover coming from Jolene and then vice versa. I think that's pretty correct, at least when I was around working for the city. I just don't know if we could simplify it, having it, especially if we have Jolene kind of working to learn a lot from Lori During over the next few years. if there's a reason to keep them positions, I guess, separately. They're both, deputy clerk and I think clerk.
Well, Jolene is, she's utility billing. That's 95% of all she does. It's just based on, and customer service. So that's big portion of her time.
I think having the separate positions gives you more flexibility down the road if one of them leaves to fill that spot versus having it all lumped together. Right now, they are separate pay grades.
Yes.
I guess, yeah, and I mean, I just see the separate pay grade, I just asking, I guess.
I mean, you can always adjust the pay grade if you want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the personnel committee talks about this more. I'm just asking as an outsider from that committee if, there's just a lot of, I see them two working together, at least when I work for the city. As we've kind of just said, Lori Waltz is a little bit different than, what them two do.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember the bulk of, I mean, it's great when people are cross-training, they can fill each other when they're gone, but most of the time, Jolene's doing her job, Lori Dern is doing her job, Lori Waltz is doing. So to really kind of, change everything because of those instances when people are on leave is just, I don't know if that's a good practice.
I guess I was just comparing it to the Public Works, did the same thing a couple years ago. I was just trying to figure out what the difference is, I guess.
Yeah.
Why Public Works, we did that, and then here it's not.
I think David Drone did that study, right, for us, that kind of with the job descriptions and then put everybody on a scale accordingly.
Yeah, they did an evaluation. You're right. Yep.
So that's kind of why that went.
Things got,
Yeah, that's why that kind of went down like that. Because an outside company did like an audit of what everybody did. They type out their job title, and that's kind of how it worked.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of looking at it from a past employee perspective, I mean, there's many times when I worked for the city, I had my water license when Robert was still here. I kind of looked at that where I had my license and, there was times I was filling in for Robert when he was gone. At that point, he's talking $30+ an hour. And, at my position, I was at 18, which obviously several positions, but like when you're trained to a point, a matter of like, well, you're capable of filling in, so, let's balance it out a little bit, if that makes sense. I did it joyfully back then, but, just in an effort to try and make sure that when employees are helping each other out too, that there's some like, well, if you know it, then, you're capable of doing the position too.
And in the past, for example, when we didn't have a city administrator and Lori would step in to do that role, she'd get compensated for
Correct.
doing that role. So I understand what you're saying, so I get it. So I'm gonna take up with the wages. Wages, go over those or.
Yeah, just, I mean, I'm more so bringing it up to you guys, just, I mean, obviously wages and stuff will come up this year too, just, so. Otherwise, I'm happy with it, unless you guys have other discussion.
No. I don't know if anyone else does.
No,
Sorry, I lost my place in my agendas.
Sorry.
Nope, that's not your fault. Okay. So how does the council want to move tonight? Do you want to approve things as are? Do you want to send it back to personnel committee?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, so we have a motion from Rose to approve the updated city clerk, finance officer, deputy city clerk, and utility billing clerk, administrative assistant job descriptions. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on our agenda is 11B, and this is actually a request that I made. This is the old school subcommittee, city council representative. At the beginning of the year, I replaced former council member MoCo on that committee, but just after attending a few meetings, being that I'm a county employee, I felt it was a conflict of interest. So I asked Leighton if he would fill that seat, and he agreed. So I'd like to step down from that committee and appoint Leighton Rose to the committee instead.
Make a motion.
Okay,
Second.
so we have a motion from Kufal, seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or questions? Thank you, Leighton, for stepping up to the plate on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have the Lake Titlow Beautification Committee appointment. Dave Nielsen offered to fill the vacancy we have on that. So thank you, Scott, for reaching out to Dave, and thank you to Dave for serving, being willing to serve. So we just need a motion to approve the appointment of Dave Nielsen to the Lake Titlow Beautification Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Rose. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any discussion or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anyone have anything else? If not, I will move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3 regarding property located at the intersection of 8th Street and State Highway 19.
So we'll be recessing the meeting here at this time, and then we'll go into a closed session thereafter.
Sounds
Talk
good.
about that.